داعش وحزب الله والنظام ثلاث وجوه لعملة واحدة.
And thank you for joining us on FutureTV. I'm Leonard Samim, and these are today's top stories. Donations for the restoration of Tripoli's Sa'ih Library exceeds the amount of $35,000, the amount required to rebuild this landmark. The United Nations is set to begin deliveries of aid to rebel-held areas in the Syrian city of Homs. And Spain's Princess Cristina gives evidence in court over fraud allegations in a corruption scandal. Donations for the restoration of Tripoli's Sa'ih Library, which was torched early this year, exceeded the amount of $35,000, which is required to rebuild this landmark. This happy announcement comes from priest Brahim Srouj, the library owner. Sarah Bitar, a volunteer in the Kafana Samtanur, translated as Enough Silence movement, which contributed to the campaign to save the library, says the donations were being collected in cash at first. Later, a website was created especially for this purpose and is available for everybody. The target amount of money was set as $35,000, and she says they were able to reach their goal and more. Bitad also says it is difficult to determine a specific date for the library to return to its normal state because there are some difficulties, especially on the security level. The library, which was torched on the 3rd of last month, is located in the historic heart of Tripoli. 4 firefighters were injured as they battled to extinguish a devastating fire that erupted at a heritage site in the southern town of Zefta in Nabatiye. The national news agency reported that some 4 hours after the blaze broke out in El Darawish Palace, firefighters had succeeded in stemming the raging flames. The injured firefighters were submitted to Nabih Berri University Hospital in Nabatiye for treatment. The owner of the palace, Hussein Bek El Darwish, says the historical heritage in the palace, dating from before the Ottoman era, was destroyed. Security agencies arrived swiftly at the scene and opened an investigation into the incident, as the reasons behind the fire is still unknown. The United Nations is set to begin deliveries of aid to rebel-held areas in the Syrian city of Homs, a day after dozens of civilians were evacuated after surviving for more than 600 days of an army siege. The UN humanitarian coordinator in Syria, Yaqub al-Helu, says UN teams have pre-positioned food, medical and other basic supplies for immediate delivery as soon as the first group of civilians are out, and hopes the aid will be delivered today. The Homs evacuation and delivery of food and medical supplies is part of a deal brokered by the UN between the Syrian government and armed rebels following months of negotiations. UN humanitarian chief Valerie Amos hailed the start as a breakthrough and describes it as a small but important step toward compliance with international humanitarian law. Coming up next, British scientists discover what they believe are the oldest human footprints outside of Africa. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Princess Cristina, daughter of Spanish King Juan Carlos, has given evidence in court over fraud allegations in a corruption scandal. Cristina appeared before a judge for a closed-door hearing on the island of Majorca in the rare royal spectacle that has raised questions over the future of the monarchy. Pro-Republican campaign groups have vowed to demonstrate nearby. The princess is accused of being complicit in the business dealings of her husband, Inaki Urdangarin, who is also under investigation, but they have not been formally charged with any crime. Both of them deny wrongdoing. Judge Jose Castro has spent more than 2 years investigating allegations that Urdangarin and a former business partner embezzled $8.18 million in public funds via a charitable foundation. Iran has resumed talks on its nuclear program with the International Atomic Energy Agency in discussions expected to broach sensitive military-related issues. The day-long discussions with the Vienna-based agency will build on a framework deal agreed in November that required Tehran to take 6 practical steps by next Tuesday. With completion of those measures, including a visit to an unfinished heavy water reactor at Arak, IAEA Chief Yukiya Amano says negotiations on more difficult things are expected to begin. This six-step November deal was struck after 2 years and nearly a dozen rounds of talks.
According to the Geneva Agreement, we agreed on the elements of the final step, or the elements of the comprehensive solution. One of the elements is the continuation of Iran's enrichment program, because that solution would involve an enrichment program, but there would be some certain limits on that. And these limits are subject to negotiations. We are ready to negotiate. We don't think that there is need for any dismantling of anything, but to define some sort of limitations on our enrichment program. This is something that has been already accepted, and we will negotiate on that, trying to find a mutually defined parameters for the Iran's enrichment program. In return, all sanctions should be lifted, either in the Security Council or unilateral sanctions and multilateral sanctions, and everything should go back to normality, and Iran's program should be dealt as a program of any other non-nuclear weapon state party to NPT. And in our region, Iran is in favor of nuclear Middle East nuclear-free zone. So we have also the same concern for nuclear weapons. We are against these kind of weapons. So if there is a real, genuine concern about nuclear program in Iran, weapon program in Iran, we will address that, we will take care of that, and we will remove that. But it doesn't need any place to be dismantled or to be shut down.
The number of civilians killed and wounded in Afghanistan's war rose to 14% last year, with nearly 3,000 people dead as violence escalates. The UN says the figures are the highest since 2009, the worst year since the U.S. invasion of 2001. Last year was also the worst for women and children. A total of 561 children were killed and 1,195 were injured, an increase of 34% on 2012. The United States will this year pull the main bulk of its military force out of Afghanistan, leaving more responsibility to Afghan forces. The Afghan and U.S. governments are continuing to negotiate a deal on what assistance Afghanistan gets after the U.S. withdrawal. And now for news around the world in brief. Ukraine has launched a terror investigation after a Ukrainian man claiming to have a bomb attempted to force a Turkish airliner to land in Russia's Sochi for the opening of the Winter Olympic Games. Police say the Ukrainian, who officials say was in advanced state of drunkenness during the incident, had a personal dislike for the politics of the president, Viktor Yanukovych, and his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin. Protesters have set fire to a section of the presidency building in the Bosnian capital city of Sarajevo as the anti-governments have spread across the country. Reports say central Sarajevo was in chaos last night, with buildings and cars burning and riot police in full gear, chasing protesters and pounding batons against their shields to get the crowd to disperse. Sources say at least 200 people were injured in the clashes. The International Criminal Court is to open a preliminary examination into violence in the Central African Republic to determine whether atrocities committed there constitute possible war crimes. Court prosecutor Fatou Bensouda says her office had reviewed many reports of extreme brutality and that allegations of crimes committed possibly fall within the ambit of the jurisdiction of the ICC. Russia celebrated the opening of the 2014 Winter Olympic Games last night in southwest Sochi city. Under the watchful eye of the world, with the event televised across the globe, the fished Olympic Stadium welcomed international athletes to rapturous applause and cheers. Across the city, local residents gathered among city squares and built up to the opening ceremony. President Vladimir Putin, in leading the celebrations, announced the opening of the Games, flanked by international leaders. British scientists exploring a beach on the country's east coast discovered what they believe are the oldest human footprints outside of Africa. They're estimated to be close to 1 million years old and are believed to be the oldest evidence of humans in northern Europe. More in this report.
Footprints of what appears to be a group of ancient humans were discovered on a beach in Norfolk in eastern Britain. They may be about 500,000 years older than the earliest footprints previously found in the country. The 3D images and the model of one of the imprints were unveiled Friday at the news conference at the British Museum in London. The museum's archaeologist, Nick Ashton, described the moment last May when he realized the footprints were left by a prehistoric man.
It was only when this overhead view was emailed through to me back in my office, I suddenly looked at it and opened up the file. And I thought, this is absolutely amazing. You know, there is no doubt this really is human footprints.
Ashton said the new discovery will alter the understanding of early human history in Europe. Liverpool John Moores University researcher Isabelle de Groot analyzed the prints.
The spread of the footprint size gives us an indication that we have children, a number of children, and then probably some adults there with at least one, with probably one male.
It is not known how the early humans survived in the cold environment of ancient northern Europe. Scientists say 1 million years ago, Britain was joined to continental Europe, and they believe that the individuals who left the footprints were related to Homo sapiens ancestors, called the pioneer man, known to have inhabited a warmer climate. Scientists continue to explore the Norfolk coastline, looking for human fossils.
Hazel and Gus are two extraordinary teenagers who share an acerbic wit, a disdain for the conventional, and a love that sweeps them and us on an unforgettable journey. Their relationship is all the more miraculous given that they met and fell in love at a cancer support group. The Fault in Our Stars, based upon the #1 best-selling novel by John Green, explores the funny, thrilling, and tragic business of being in love and alive.
About how to tell sad stories. On the one hand, you can sugarcoat it. And nothing is too messed up that can't be fixed with a Peter Gabriel song. I like that version as much as the next girl does. It's just not the truth. This is the truth.
Hey, make some friends.
Sorry.
My bad. I'm Augustus Waters. I've been in remission for about 1.5 years.
Maybe you'd like to share some of your fears with the group.
Fears? Oblivion. What's your name?
Hazel.
What's your full name?
Hazel Grace Lancaster. Why are you staring at me?
Because you're beautiful. So, what's your story?
I was diagnosed when I was 13.
Your real story.
I am quite unextraordinary.
I reject that out of hand.
You know, Gus talks about you all the time.
We're just friends.
I hope you realize you trying to keep your distance from me in no way lessens my affection for you.
Gus, I'm a grenade. One day I'm gonna blow up, and I'm gonna obliterate everything in my wake. And I don't want to hurt you.
You don't get to choose if you get hurt in this world, but you do have a say in who hurts you. I am in love with you, Hazel Grace. And I know that love is just a shout into the void, and that oblivion is inevitable. And I am in love with you. All your efforts to keep me from you are gonna fail.
We are a hot mess.
Are you angry?
So angry.
You need to break something.
You gave me a forever within the numbered days, and I can't tell you how thankful I am for our little infinity.
It's a good life, Hazel Grace. Okay.
This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our top stories. Donations for the restoration of Tripoli's Sa'ah Library exceeds the amount of $35,000, the amount required to rebuild this landmark. The United Nations is set to begin deliveries of aid to rebel-held areas in the Syrian city of Homs. And finally, Spain's Princess Cristina gives evidence in court over fraud allegations in a corruption scandal. Those were your Sunday headlines from us here at Future Television. I'm Linda Tamim, wishing you all a very nice weekend.
وحزب الله هو النظام ثلاث وجوه لعملة واحدة.